This is Shu Hirata's Let's Talk Japanese Fight Sports with Charlie Jewett from sogokaku.com. Let's begin. Hey, Charlie.
How you doing?
Sorry, it's been about 2 months, but let's try to catch up. I've been
busy.
A little too busy.
Probably tell by my beard length that it's been a while.
Oh, I know. Your beard is so much longer now, so you can tell how long it's been,
Yeah, exactly. It's like a
All
tree.
right, so let's go. Okay, so let's dive into this subject first. Enson Inoue arrested. Now, how big of a news this was in Japan?
It was fairly big news because obviously Enson is a very public figure. He's very well known because, not to go over his whole career, but he fought in MMA when MMA was the most popular in Japan.
And he was
a household name.
Yeah, go ahead.
Plus,
he was about to get more attention from the breaking down, right?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. He already had that initial level of popularity.
Right.
But it was resurging because he was kind of becoming this older mentor-like figure on the Breaking Down show. And that's actually coming back to kind of bite him in the ass because he was telling guys oh, you got to stop getting in trouble. You got to get your act together. Then he was on Twitter saying don't do drugs and all this stuff. And then this comes out and just really bad timing. Also, not related to him at all, but we've talked about before, Breaking Down is kind of having an issue where they're having a lot of negative publicity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys in Breaking Down are getting arrested for violent crimes, drugs, and it just seems like really bad timing for him to also get arrested.
Right. We can talk about the Breaking Down later when we talk about Sudario and Anpo, but let's talk about Inoue. This is his third time getting arrested, as far as I know. I think once.
Right. So in 2008, he was arrested for pot.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting because he got a 10-month suspended sentence with 4 years probation.
Sure.
But part of that was he apparently promised the judge he would never do drugs again.
Oh, well.
And to me, the way that I'll always be an outsider in Japan, but I feel like the new judge is going to be looking at this old case where oh, you promised to never do this again. Now you're doing it again. Maybe it won't be a suspended sentence this time. And then before that, I think he got arrested for assaulting a journalist.
Yeah, I think so. Right, at the gym.
I think that might have been over the journalist. He was saying the journalist was stalking his then wife at the time or something.
Mm-hmm.
But he was arrested, and I believe he also got a suspended sentence for that one as well. But
this time it's not a pot, right? Isn't that more ecstasy kind of thing mixed in the chocolate?
It said what? Psilocybin or whatever. Isn't that the kind of stuff that's in mushrooms?
Oh, it's a mushroom. Okay. All right. Yeah.
I'm not a drug expert. I think
just to let the viewers know, the magic mushroom.
It was psilocybin, which I think is the stuff that's in mushrooms.
Oh, okay. Well, because the magic mushroom was legal in Japan too. I'll say 15 years ago, right? I think. Yeah.
But they did the classic. For those that aren't aware, so in Japan, there's this thing where they can arrest you and they can hold you up for 20 days.
22 for whatever.
28 days.
Yeah, without a lawyer, and they could extend that too.
No, but the way that they extend it is that they release you, quote.
Yeah.
Then there's police waiting outside to rearrest you.
Exactly. Yeah.
For a different charge, and so that's happened to Enson. He was initially arrested for allegedly mailing chocolate with drugs in it to himself from Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And now the rearrest is because they're now saying that he actually brought chocolate with him on the flight as well. So he's serving his 28-day stint right now.
Right. So he's still in the can then, basically. Being interrogated every day, probably 12 hours a day.
If you guys ever read about it, it's like a horror story. They interrogate you over 7 hours a day.
Yeah, 12 hours. Sometimes they don't.
You're not allowed to speak English in jail, so you can only speak Japanese. Right. And they essentially just try to berate you into confessing and begging the judge for mercy.
Well, this is the third time, so I have a feeling he would have to do some time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be one thing if it was unrelated, but considering this is another drug
Drug
offense,
related, yeah,
different.
yeah.
And I feel like I've heard that the kind of the stereotype is in Japan, like they kind of give you like a slap on the wrist the first time, but then after that, they're much harder.
But also, I think that there's a two law. There's a pot and there's other drugs, and he's in
Right.
the other drug category. So I mean, that's going to be much heavier, you know. So
Yeah.
he enhanced the drug dealer, I mean, user from the judge's point of view, right? From
Right.
pot to, you know, mushrooms and stuff like that. So
Yeah, but
and
I have a hard time understanding the Japanese legal system though, because it really just seems like it comes down to the prosecutor and the judge what's going to happen.
oh yeah, it is 99.9%. They win. The prosecutor wins the case, and so
Right. So
judge, if the judge writes no, like a not guilty sentence, that will affect their promotions. So
yeah.
judges are encouraged to not, write
Well,
not
that's why
guilty verdict. So
that's why they do that thing where they extend it. They keep rearresting you
mhm,
because they don't want to take it to trial unless they're like guaranteedly going to win.
right, they need that confession.
So they
That
try to get you to confess while
right,
they're searching for evidence. But yeah.
yeah, it's too bad. But again, in Mr. Inou's case, he knows the law in Japan very well. He's been living there for a long time, so he knew the risk he was taking. So
Such a because I remember wasn't Paul McCartney like banned from coming to Japan for a long
yeah,
time for botch?
they arrested him, they handcuffed him, and deported him. He
Yeah.
was there for the tour, so all of his concerts got canceled and stuff like that. So yeah,
That's my thing. Like if a guy like Paul McCartney is getting arrested, like one of the most famous people on the planet,
right.
they're not going to be nice to someone who's not
No,
that level.
especially when he got arrested before.
Right.
And
Well, also, my fear would be that because Breaking Down is getting all this negative press, do you
mhm,
get a prosecutor that's looking to make an example of
maybe,
somebody on the show?
in a way, yeah. But again, there's so many cases who got arrested, right, on the breaking down cases. So people are all getting,
True,
yeah.
but
But
there's
again,
also
Enson is the most famous,
there's
you
the
know.
whole foreigner angle too, where he might be treated differently because
So,
he's not Japanese.
in fact, actually, I was surprised that Enson still lives in Japan. I
I
mean,
was kind of surprised about that too, because
I'll tell
I
you
would
this,
imagine that after you'd been arrested, it'd be really hard to keep your visa.
exactly, or residency, whatever that is. But who knows? Maybe he got a Japanese citizen after he married to a Miyu a long time ago. Who knows? I don't know. But here's what I feel. Like I've never told this to anyone, but Anson was a year older than me in high school. He was a racquetball player in Hawaii. I was a swimmer
Yeah.
in Hawaii. We both won MVP on the same year.
Oh, I didn't
And
know that.
yeah, and actually, so I saw him at the hotel reception that when we got the award. And also, I'm just telling this because he used to work at the bicycle shop called Macaulay Bicycle Store, and the manager there was a head coach of his Hawaii swimming all-star team. So I was in all-star team, so I knew his coach. I mean, I know his boss pretty well. So I feel a little close, and I hear a lot about him as a good guy. But we all grew up in Hawaii, and smoking weed was a pretty common thing from
Yeah.
back then. So I mean, in my high school, you go to the bathroom, you can buy weed easy. In the 80s. So I don't know why people like that still insist on living in Japan. You can go to Japan for a gig. Hawaii is pretty close. If
Right.
he's there in Hawaii eating chocolate, smoking weed, whatever, he will never get into this kind of trouble.
Well,
Never. You
it's like
know?
when I had people come to my wedding, I was just like very adamant with them. Like the punishment, the risk is not worth the reward on this.
That's
Do not
exactly
bring anything with you. Like
right.
they will come down on you very harshly.
Exactly. And what Anson did is not, he didn't rob a bank or anything like that. The point is, it was this naughty guy, grew up in Hawaii. And, nice guy, but naughty. And just, grew up old, being naughty. But the risk he took is just stupid, right? I mean,
And I can't imagine taking that kind of risk,
yeah,
especially
that's
when you're kind of like a public figure. I mean, I've heard stories of people getting drugs delivered to their house in Japan that they didn't order, they had nothing to do with it coming to their house, and they still got arrested and had to
yes.
like fight tooth and nail to prove that like I didn't order this. I don't know why this showed up at my house.
I heard it's very easy to buy something on the internet. There are a lot of ads out there, on some so-called dark bulletin board, and it's not that hard, and people deliver it to your door and stuff like that.
Well, I've also heard of just like friends that aren't thinking, like put something in a box for you and send it to you.
Exactly, right. Yeah. I don't know if you remember this, but there's a movie called Ballad of Narayama that won the Cannes Film Festival Grand Prix. The actress Sumiko Sakamoto, who was starring in that movie, she got arrested for weed right after that. But her excuse was like some photographer gave her this package, she didn't know what it was. You know what I mean? So, and it's very, very hard to prosecute it, that case, without a solid evidence. So to go back to this topic, remember one of my clients, Jinosuke Kasumura, got arrested, and
Right, yeah.
he got off. He ended up getting not prosecuted. It was just not enough evidence.
Right.
So
like I think
nothing on the record.
like I think he got off. I think King Reina got off as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of cases people gets off even though you get arrested. But the problem with Japanese society is that they report the fact that you get arrested, but then when they report the fact they didn't get prosecuted.
Well, they also screw you because
screw
even
you.
without you getting prosecuted, they hold you in jail for 28 days. So I mean, you're gonna lose your job. You're probably gonna lose your apartment. Like it just even if you're innocent, it's pretty like life changing to be
It
arrested.
is very life changing. And in Enson's case, I hear that his wife is also arrested too, right? So
right, but I think she might have been released after the first 28 days.
Oh, okay, yeah. But again, he might. And again, I'm pretty sure they will not be allowed to leave the country until the trial. So it's not like they have a choice to go back. I think
I don't know how accurate it is, but I saw that when last time he got charged with the weed, he wasn't allowed to leave Japan during his probation period.
Oh, I bet.
I think which was 4 years.
Yeah,
3 or 4 years. I mean, that's rough too. Like, you can't go home. You're stuck here for 3 to 4 years.
Right. But again, after Carlos Ghosn thing, they have to be more cautious about, right? I mean,
for people that aren't aware, you should look into the Carlos Ghosn story. That's
right. I mean, that's amazing. And to summarize this topic, that ex-Navy SEAL guy, whatever, the guy who assisted Carlos Ghosn,
who actually had to go serve time in a Japanese jail.
In Japan, but I heard the Japanese jail was so clean and nice. Food was so much better than anything you could get in American jail. So guys from the Navy SEALs and stuff, it was a breeze. I heard to spend a couple years.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that guy was such a moron. That guy should have kept his mouth shut and it's been like, I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's talk about some other topic. Yeah. This one, Kai Asakura going to UFC, which is I'm so happy for him, and I'm glad that
there's a lot of speculation about this because I think like a week maybe or a couple days before the last RIZIN event is like all of his social media descriptions changed from RIZIN fighter to MMA fighter.
Oh, really?
People were all speculating they think he had finally made it to the UFC.
Yeah, I'm hearing that he got a very good contract for the lighter weight class guys, and his real wish is probably fight at 125, but he would begin fighting at 135, is what I'm hearing.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know if UFC is doing something, but he is already getting so much attention from foreign media about going to the UFC. They're all saying like Japan's top star, Japanese superstar coming to the UFC. And they're like really hyping him up, which I think is very interesting.
Here's one key point. Remember like how UFC rejected Horiguchi? They basically told him that they're not interested. Yeah. And it's the same thing kind of formula applies to my client Naoki. The UFC does not like fighters who loses to a Bellator fighter or PFL fighter. So the loss, the Horiguchi took against Sergio, and same theory for Naoki on Archuleta. Like that's a huge blow, big break for them to try to get back to UFC. But on the other side of the coin, look at Kai, who knocked out Archuleta, right? Became a champion. So his resume is perfect for UFC, Well,
also, I mean, you got to remind some of the Japanese fight fans and people like the UFC is in the business of selling pay-per-views. And if Kai Asakura, a man with a massive social media following, is also knocking out Bellator champions, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, this is almost equivalent to when Takanori Gomi signed with the UFC.
Right.
But plus, Kai is way more in a sense because of social media right now, right? So it's easy, accessible for fans.
He's younger, and he's still in his prime.
Right. So the concern I have is that remember what they did to guys like Gomi. They put Kenny Florian right off the bat kind of stuff. So they'll probably put him against a pretty tough
I think they
bantamweight.
said
Yeah, the rumor is that he's fighting Australia, right? Against
the rumor like a top 5 guy.
yeah, Uriah's guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's what it is. I could see that happening in Perth because Australia, it's very easy for Japanese to get a visa. And it's super easy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they don't have to go through embassy interviews, none of that. Everything is online. So you can just go over there and fight. The only issue is that actually Australia has a higher tax than US. So, a big portion of his purse will be, withhold. But that's okay for him, right? I mean, he probably can make money. He'll be like a Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
He will be afford to defer 95% of payment in a way, right? I mean,
Right.
because he has other source of income.
Plus, I mean, I think he's kind of the perfect rising fighter to be going to do this. Like, he's such a better option than Mikuru. Plus, he has his manager. Say what you will about his manager. They've put a gym around him now. Where they have a head coach. They have like a whole staff. They've collected a bunch of sparring partners for him. I think
they're doing
in a very good position.
The right thing. If they cannot afford or cannot some reason like him who's busy in Japan cannot move permanent to the US, but if you can afford to make your own team in Japan, just do it. Just like the world heavyweight boxing champions, they have their own camp. You know what I mean? That's what they're doing, and it's totally smart. And they're not really that gym is not really relying on membership, right? I mean, they're not really making money, so which is actually a smart approach at this point,
Right.
And the fact that they could afford to do it, that they have a good sponsors and have other breaking downs, the sources of money that coming in. So I think it's the new business model in terms of the Japanese MMA fighters. So I would be very looking forward to see him, what he's going to do. And I like the fact that even though he starts at the bantamweight, if he loses a couple of times, he has option to drop down to 125. And it could be the
I don't think a Japanese fighter has ever been at the peak of their popularity like he is and then gone to the UFC.
No.
Besides like Mizugaki and Okami, who like did the long term in the UFC.
Yeah, but they were never popular in Japan.
Exactly. They were never popular in Japan.
They were never known in Japan, even though they were ranked number 5 kind of stuff. Or even though they did the title fight, nobody knew them.
Like Gomi and Kid were already on like the downward.
Yeah, so as Nishima, all these Pride guys, I would say they went there about 5 years late. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, so but I'm so happy Kai is going right now. Doesn't have to wait or take a risk doing another fight in RIZIN,
I'm happy that you also brought up the Horiguchi comment earlier because I saw the most recent episode of Breaking Down where Horiguchi was like hoping that his most recent win over Sergio Pettis would help him get into the UFC. But he also mentioned like, they have Kai now, they have Taira, so it's going to be hard to get another Japanese fighter. But I think he's thinking about it all wrong. I don't think they care that there's a bunch of Japanese fighters in the lower weight.
Yeah. I mean, point is like for some reason, Japanese fans or Japanese people in this business tend to think, it has to be a limit for the Japanese fighters. No, it's not.
I think there is a limit.
I mean, look at the Brazilians. If you win, they don't care. They'll sign like 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 people per division if they have to.
Plus, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but my stance has always been on Horiguchi that his first run in the UFC, he didn't move the needle. He didn't get a lot of finishes, and he didn't re-sign the contract, which probably pissed them off. And so now they think, why should we bring you back? You left.
Because in his first run in UFC, a lot of people don't realize until he gets to the title fight, he only fought one ranked fighter. So they really built him up. They really did and tried to make something happen. And he had the great title fights and stuff like that. But of course, he didn't resign. So they're pretty pissed. And he lost to Sergio Pettis, and that knockout highlight is all over the place. So, and the fact that he's not young, right? So,
he's only 33, but like fight wise, he's like a Nogueira. He's got like a million miles on the gas tank. Plus, I mean, I feel like a lot of his initial popularity, at least in the UFC, was they liked that he was associated with Kid Yamamoto.
Mm-hmm.
They liked being able to like tie that connection together and use it to market him. Because let's be honest, back then he didn't talk a lot. He was one of those guys. It's like, I'm a respectful fighter. actions inside the cage, which isn't a good way to sell tickets, unfortunately.
Right. So that was actually, and when they didn't resign him, remember the UFC was saying, well, he doesn't speak English anyway. And that was the era when like even LPGA was thinking about making every athlete speak English kind of stuff. But it has changed dramatically right now that it's being proven in other sports.
Yep.
I mean, speaking English really doesn't matter, right? I mean,
Well, plus
look
it's
at Otani, you know?
well, back then it was still kind of bullshit too, because I remember
Exactly. It was bullshit back then, you know?
watching Machida barely string a sentence together of like, "This is Dragon." Like, doesn't matter. They don't care. Like,
Doesn't matter if you're a good athlete producing great results, making highlight reels, and it really doesn't matter, right? So,
because I mean, what we have Taira just like saying, "I like hamburgers" and stuff, and
right,
people love him.
right now, Paul Tan is one of the most popular fighter in UFC. He doesn't speak a word of English, you know. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
I don't think it matters at all.
so in that sense, I love the fact that Taira and Asakura, both very young, prime of their age, it's in the UFC, which is, I think it's great. And we can talk about Taira that he just won 6 in a row. And,
So impressive.
you know, it's impressive it on the paper, but it's not like he really fought tough guys, except the last fight.
No,
And that was kind of freak accident too. So I wish that fight went longer to see what's going to happen, you know, because I think he could have won that fight and he had ability to, but I wish he had a clear finish, you know.
well, I think the UFC is building him up correctly. Which
Mhm.
not all fighters get that blessing from the UFC. They're building. They see a potential star, so they're gradually building him up.
That too, but also Tyler got lucky. Remember a couple of his fights, opponents pulled out on last minute, so they had to
Right.
sign a new guy. So he really fought a couple of guys who really doesn't belong in the UFC. But that's still part of the luck is something the athlete's born with, right? So
That's something you got to be ready. Like you have to be ready to take advantage of those situations when they come
right,
up.
exactly. And he capitalized it, you know.
Yeah.
But, you
Plus, I
know,
mean,
so I'm so happy, but I'm kind of sad that he broke the record of Mizugaki, who won 5 in a row. Because on the record, I gotta tell this for Mr. Mizugaki's sake that he fought much tougher fighter, way tougher
yeah.
fighter that achieved that 5 in a row. So, you know, but again, you know, we'll see what happens to Taira. And I gotta mention this to you, just because of this Asakura and Taira in UFC. Now, I'm pretty sure many UFC fans and even in this business is talking about, okay, there's another UFC Japan show. Now, that's I think still a big hurdle.
Now what I'm thinking is if Kai wins, gets a couple wins together, and if Rate Sudaya wins his debut this week, and you get then all of a sudden it becomes more of a possibility if you have 3 fighters that they can build an event around.
Sure, but the point is that the way UFC works is like they will not go into that market without guarantee that they will make money. So the last 3 UFC shows, Dentsu bought the rights, remember? And it was back then it was only $1 was like 80 yen. So right now it's like $1 is like 160. So whoever who's going to take the responsibility of doing this Japan show in Japan, which could be a company like you next or even Dentsu again, they would have to prepare more than double the money that they're used to pay. And, you know, I'm feeling even in this business or anywhere else, out of Asian countries, Japan is the one that's really declining. I mean, I can tell by talk. I mean, you know, every time I'm in talk with investors or any new promoters, they're not really interested in any money from Japan anymore. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's
the yen is
Japan's
so
the
weak.
money.
We can
Yeah.
talk about it later when we talk about the rising ticket prices, but
Oh yeah, I know.
the yen is so weak right now. It's for people outside of Japan. It is. I'll give you some examples just to show you how bad it is when we talk about that. But
Hmm.
for anyone to pay for anything in dollars in Japan is going to be incredibly expensive.
Oh, I know. Incredibly expensive. I mean, I you know, I move money from Japan too here and there because I earn some of the earnings in Japan, right? So I feel like I'm getting a huge pay cut last, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, we
With
can talk about it right
that,
now.
right? Super Rising tickets. I mean, they're pretty
So
expensive, you know.
let me just go over some of these prices just to show
Okay.
you because I also looked up what this would have been worth in dollars like in 2020 just
Mm-hmm.
to show you because this may not sound expensive. I'm just going to try to illustrate how weak the yen has gotten. So right now, the most expensive ticket is 1,100,000 yen,
Mm-hmm.
which in today's money in the U.S. would be like $7,000. In 2020, that's $11,000.
Right. So that's a huge difference.
Yeah, like that is how much it is just like shattered. Like even the cheapest tickets right now are $95 now. 2020, it's 150.
Mm-hmm.
So just think everything is like 2/3 of what it used to be essentially.
Yes.
It's just
That's why I think doing the UFC, doing the Japan show is still a very tall order until this currency problem is solved. You know,
well, it's not going to be solved too because I think they actually think it's going to drop to 160 this week.
I know. I know. I mean, there's some people. I mean, most of the corporation in Japan, when they do like estimates for the year after, like next year, they're already calculating based on 200 yen per dollar, and considering those buffers and contingencies and stuff like that. So, yeah,
So
yeah. So,
the only reason I did that though was because American fans might do the conversion and be like, "Oh, that doesn't sound that expensive. $150 to get a ticket." But you have to understand that that's in dollars. In yen, where the average salary in Japan has to be like $30,000 a year, probably lower, but maybe $25,000
lower
a
because it
year.
was like a 4
Yeah.
million yen or something like that, right? So,
Yes.
yeah.
So like what, $25,000 a year? Like these are, and plus Tokyo's not a cheap place. So these tickets are very expensive. But that being said, they're selling very well.
They're selling well, very well. I'm very surprised about that because the tickets are super expensive, and again, compared to let's say the last New York UFC shows, actually the tickets are higher. you know,
Oh, yeah. Like if you
that's
broke
why
it
I'm a little
down,
bit amazed by this because this is New York where economy is doing well, and even the dishwasher makes $40 an hour kind of stuff. So
I mean, they just announced some new tickets too. Dude, I have to read this to you. So they announced two new types of tickets. They're S stage side and A stage side. And
yeah,
this is the warning that's on the ticket, by the way. These
it's
are
a
stage side tickets located to the side and behind the stage.
Mhm.
You cannot see the athletes entering the stage, the screen, and it is difficult to hear, but you can generally see the ring. These tickets sound absolutely awful.
Right.
Who's going to buy these
But
tickets?
people still buy it. So those
Exactly.
fans want to be it, I guess. So it's a phenomenon of Asakura and Hiramoto because
Exactly.
this is way before Pacquiao was announced. And Pacquiao is really not a huge draw,
Well, these tickets went on sale way before that was announced.
way before, right? And it was selling very well to begin with. So,
Well, plus, I mean, I was actually looking at the Google Trends for the past 90 days,
mhm.
and Mikuru is trending double Hiramoto. But in compare, that's still very good for Hiramoto because Mikuru has a YouTube channel and all this other stuff going on. So he's naturally going to be generating more results.
Right. Breaking
Compared
down.
to his other opponents, Mikuru is like 100 times higher.
Right,
And
right.
then I compared it with Tenshin. Hiramoto's generating the same search results as Tenshin.
Yeah, pretty
They're at the
much.
same level. So I mean, Hiramoto is huge right now. So
Yeah.
this fight is happening at the perfect time.
And if he wins this one, it's going to make
Oh,
him
huge.
bigger than ever. And he will probably take over as a new face of RIZIN since
Oh yeah.
he's gone. But, speaking of RIZIN, I almost think like Sakakibara is like sort of like to destroy all the Japanese fighters because all these new guys they signed, they looked really better, much better than most of the Japanese fighters, especially on the featherweights. I mean,
Well, I think like I don't know if I'm kind of confused by his matchmaking. Like the example I'll use is at Rising 47. They had Bay Noah fight Johnny Case to punish Bay Noah, but Bay Noah won. I'm
right.
like, how is this a punishment for Bay Noah? He's beat like a high caliber opponent. So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Rising, it seems like they like to build a new division, like they like to build a new city. But once
Yeah.
it's done, they like to burn it. Like
Exactly.
they destroy the whole thing
Well,
and rebuild again. It's like a scrap and build all the time.
I know this will drive Jay Wolf crazy, but what I don't like is they do like these Grand Prix, but the Grand Prix just saps the division so much that it takes like a year and a half for them to get the division going again because
Right.
all the fighters are injured or beat up or
Right.
not
So
ready
ever
to
since
fight.
the bantamweight big Grand Prix, what Grand Prix they did, right? Almost nothing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, right now that's not the direction they're going to, you know.
But they have, you are right. They've signed a bunch of pretty good signings recently.
Very good signings, and I hate to tell you this, but it's going to be very difficult to find a featherweight Japanese who can really compete against that level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's like, I tell you this back in Pride days too. At the end of the day, one of the biggest fights are always Fedor against Nogueira or Prokop against Vanderlei kind of stuff. So it was never really the Japanese fighters, really, except guys like Ogawa against Yoshida, kind
Right.
of. Sakuraba,
But
a different exception, you know?
those fights were big, obviously, internationally. But I feel like for a Japanese promotion to succeed, they always need some sort of Japanese superstar.
They do, right? That's why they needed. They had Sakuraba, right?
Exactly.
Pride.
Yeah.
It was not Sakuraba. It was Pride. So right now, that's the concern because Kai is gone. Now Horiguchi's around, but he's still probably under the Bellator contract, so it's not like he's free to be in RIZIN anytime he wants. I'm assuming, So it's really who's the next star except Ren, but Ren probably is still not ready to fight those new featherweight signings.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very difficult, I think.
No, it will be difficult, especially when the pay-per-view model is clearly working for them at this point. But I think they still haven't solved the issue of creating a superstar without terrestrial TV.
No. I mean, again, the Asakura brothers were a phenomenon from social media, like YouTube, which was the right timing. So not the Chizuru terrestrial television, right?
They fought on Fuji TV.
Right. So basically, I don't know who's the next star, to tell the truth. I don't really see the young fighter coming up, both male and female. And it seems like young fighters still prefer to do road to UFC tournament now. If this is going to be again every year.
The good ones, the guys that are really good, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Also,
even the guys who's not really good,
But it also feels like Chihiro Suzuki, for example, almost became a star by accident. It felt like RIZIN kept wanting him to lose to people, and he just kept winning, despite what they were doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And now he's so busy. I feel like they're going to break him. I mean, he just had that exhibition with Gomi.
Right.
Now he's fighting Pacquiao, and they're already trying to get him to fight Kleber.
Right.
This guy's going to fall to pieces. You guys need to give him a little bit of a break.
And I bet you he's the type of a guy who is, I can tell he's a real nice guy, and he'll probably say no, won't say no to anything. He'll probably take every offer that comes into the table. He's probably like the type of guy like Bob Sapp in his peak years in Japan. He'll take everything, which is good, So yeah, he is a star already, but I don't know if he's got what it takes to really beat those Azerbaijan guys,
I also haven't noticed if he has like the mic skills. I still can't tell if he has like the charisma to get the crowd behind him.
Right.
Like Mikuru does, kind of like Kid did. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, we'll see. And also I can see that UFC, I mean, the RIZIN is trying to sell their shows to another country too, because I'm hearing, I can't reveal that some of the big casinos in Asia are talking to them about bringing them over. Yeah, and also... Yeah, they might do another Azerbaijan show. And so it kind of makes sense to build the fighters in that territories where, in a way, UFC is not really penetrating. So they could create another Mirko Krokop or Vanderlei on their own and alongside with new Sakuraba. So, they could be, very interesting promotions outside UFC, because when you really look at the outside UFC, I mean, besides KSW and RIZIN and one, how long all these promotional lasted? Like, there's not much promotion that lasted longer than 10 years.
No, not at all.
No, and one may not be in a good shape in terms of MMA. There's more kickboxing fights going on.
They have their events now. They have like one MMA fight with 10 kickboxing bouts.
Oh, I know. But still, some fighters still go on 5-for-1, because especially those Friday night fights, I guess it's only one fight contract most of the time. So, you can go over there. But Japanese fighters not losing there. They're not winning. So
Sawada's winning. Yeah, right. Chihiro's winning over there. That's about it.
Chihiro is winning. I'm so happy that she's there, because that's the only promotion with her weight classes.
Exactly.
So yeah.
I'll respond to a comment that WMMA Scene now made. He said that he's surprised that Izawa is not defending her title at Super Rising. I will tell you, she was supposed to defend her title at Super Rising against Rena, but she is injured. And I think she might have just had a surgery, which is why Kate Lotus was brought up as like a last-minute replacement. Because I think Rising was like when Rena fought Yuri, it was a very the pretty girl fight was a very popular, got a lot of attention. So we're just going to do another pretty girl fight until Izawa's ready to fight.
So Izawa, do you think she'll be ready by end of September? Because there's another big Saitama Super Arena show there.
I don't know the details, but I think it looks like she's moving around. I don't see like a big cast on her or anything.
Because they're already doing matchmaking on end of September.
Oh, interesting.
I've already confirmed a couple of fights from my clients there.
Yeah, I know that. I'm pretty sure I read that she was the unofficial word is that they were going for Rena versus Izawa at Super Rising.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again,
because apparently Rena's really only interested in fighting Izawa or fighting abroad.
Because Rena is on the way out, so she has no reason to take no big fights. It's the only big fight left is against Izawa. So I mean, in a way, I wish one releases Itsuki Hirata at this point. I mean, I think she should come into RIZIN and fight in this super atomweight division because they need more talents in that division. Otherwise, there's no division there.
Division's dead, man. It's so depressing to me because I'm a fan, obviously, as women's MMA. If you look at the numbers, it's like what 3-4 fights a year now. It's just sad almost.
Right.
The amount of action that's going on there. Plus, it's even because there's a good number of fighters. Plus, I agree with you 100%. Itsuki, her last fight, I think she's too small to fight at one championship's atomweight division, which is every other division strawweight.
Strawweight, yeah, she's a little too small. Yeah.
So, and dude, she has such charisma and superstar potential. I feel like if she fought in Rising, she could get so much attention because she kind of has. Would it be kind of similar? She kind of has like almost like a Hiromoto-esque aura of like being a bad boy, but also not being like evil, but kind of just being that bad boy image.
Exactly, and Rising is very good at setting up a stage for not quite the first-rate fighter to make it look like a first-rate fighter. And I don't mean to be cynical here, but that's what they do. They're very good at that. So
that's the promoter's job. That's the promoter's job.
That's the promoter's job. So they're excellent on that, right? So I think in that sense, it's for Itsuki. I think RIZIN is the perfect place for her right now. And after all, I mean, to get this women's MMA going again, I mean, you have to have a popularity in the sports in that country. And in Japan right now, I mean, really, it's not many big stars.
No, Itsuki's huge. I think I did the social media numbers. She might have the biggest social media presence of any Japanese woman now.
Exactly, right.
She's got a ton of international attention.
Mm-hmm.
She's effortlessly charismatic, which Izawa seems to require a lot of work to be charismatic.
Exactly. So that's what you're born with. So, if you don't have it, you don't have it, unfortunately. So, but in that sense, then Izawa should take more like a Sakuraba route where he should just keep finding top fighters. But, in order for RIZIN to bring in top female fighters from another country, the division has to be active. And the part of the key to make this division active is to have a pretty good, known, popular Japanese fighters. So if I were RIZIN, I would try to sign Itsuki. I would try to sign Kanako, who is, already released from the UFC,
I just don't know what's going on because I don't know if Deep Jewels is like very, like, we'll give you these fighters, but only on our terms on like a temporary basis, or what's going on because it seems like Oshima almost has to like beg RIZIN for fights. She's always like a last minute replacement to like step in.
She's always a last minute replacement.
Or like, I don't know why Watanabe Ayaka from Shuto hasn't been back. There's a lot of young, good girls in that division. I just don't know. There must be some like politics going on backstage. I just don't know why these fighters aren't appearing more.
I think they're just looking for the right talent to build around that division. So they're using those fighters, but they're just not quite catching that popularity, you know.
I feel like while you're looking, you got to keep it busy. You got to keep bringing these fighters in. Then until you find someone better, then you bring them in. You got to keep it moving.
Right, but I think with the deep jewels in picture in the calendar, it's just not enough female fighters out there, you know. So it's quite difficult. Now, you know, Saudi, Higashi both in Invicta now, so that they're sort of kind of out of the picture, right? So
yeah. Plus, I mean, they have to say about one championship. I mean, one championship for the most part pays pretty well compared to like other regional promotions. So women are willing to move up in weight to go to one championship.
You know, I'm going to take this on the record. The RIZIN pays well too. Most of my clients in RIZIN will be are making way more than what they'd be making in UFC. So,
absolutely,
yeah. So
Asakura Kai, I bet he's taking a huge pay cut to go.
Huge. But for him, again, he's Shohei Ohtani. He has that source of income, so doesn't matter, you know.
Ichi says that one has no reason to release Hirata.
So I'm looking at it right now, which is true.
But I almost feel like if Sawada keeps winning, they might release her or Ayaka Miura because they'll just be like, we have a popular Japanese girl now to keep Abima happy.
Right. And also, I think they get a little bit more money if they put the Japanese fighters in there. They get more.
From Abima?
Yeah. Not Abima. They're UNEX now, right?
Oh, UNEX.
Yeah, so lots of deals are usually like that. So I wouldn't be surprised, you know?
I have a question. So I was talking to someone from Invicta FC. It looks like the Japanese broadcasting hasn't been decided yet. So it's going to be on either Abima or UNEX.
Not yet. We will know in about today or tomorrow. After this, I'm about to actually reach out to person UNEX and find out what happened. But I think more than like, I'll tell you this, UNEX's new budget kicks in from September. So their budget pretty much spent up to August. So I think what they're going to do is probably a delayed streaming on this weekend show and do live streaming from August or something like that. That's
interesting. Because the U.S. broadcast is on like CBS Sports?
Sports, yeah, right.
I don't know what that is, but I've been out of the U.S. too long.
You know, about this American TV right now, see, if you're not on NBC, CBS, ABC, or Fox on regular television, everything else is streaming service.
Right, yeah.
The streaming service is all based on what you subscribe. So if you happen to subscribe something, it's affiliated with CBS Sports, you can watch it. But if it's not, then it's just not accessible, you know? So am I going to buy another subscription to try to get access? I don't know, you know?
I mean, it's just, yeah. Well, they're always bringing out those numbers now, like what it costs to be a UFC fan. So, I mean.
Right. I mean, but here's in America, it's really hard to see sports. It's very.
Oh, WMMA scene said that CBS Sports is on cable.
Oh. It's on cable, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but again, this is the point. Who has a cable these days? That's my point. So then
go to your grandparents' house. Go to your grandparents' house.
I'd be forced to buy something like Sling TV kind of stuff, you know, which is kind of expensive every month, you know.
I will say though, it is kind of exciting because I feel like Invicta at least appeared to be like a walking corpse for a couple years. It's nice to see them like moving again, making some moves,
right?
Bringing some exciting fighters over.
But again, so let's say if I were to get a cable again, which I won't, you know, it's going to cost me about $50-$60 per month, right? I mean, to watch Invicta, I would do that. Man, probably not. Especially the Major League Baseball, MLB.com, had this Father's Day special a couple of days ago. An year subscription was like $59. So just to watch Shohei, I'm like, all right, I guess I buy that. So that's compared to that, right? Buying cable is very expensive. Sling TV and everything else is quite expensive, $60.
I'm just hoping this winds up on either UNX or Abima. That'll be much easier for me.
Yes, I hope so. That's what I'm trying to push. And I wish this CBS Sports will stream somewhere too. I don't know. It should be able to stream somewhere, right? I mean,
yeah.
They
probably have a website. They probably have a website or an app or something.
Right. I mean, this day and age, you always stream, right? Not only on cable, because not that many watch cables anyway, you know?
I mean, one of the funnier Invicta stories is, do you remember there was an Invicta, I forget which one, I have the information down somewhere, where they actually lost their stream. They forgot to record their event.
Really?
Yeah. And they had to get someone who pirated the event to give them a copy.
Oh, Jesus.
This is all alleged, of course, but yeah. Don't come at me.
Right. So I'm glad these two Japanese fighters in Invicta, and both are in a pretty good fight. So if they win this fight, more than likely they'll get a title shot in September.
Well, this is great for Higashi because she was having to fight up a weight class in PFL, right?
Right. She was fighting a weight class higher, heavier. So I'm so happy. And of course, she had to take a big pay cut, big difference from PFL and the Invicta. But still, since yen is so much weaker, the money she'll be making is so much better than the money she'll be making in Japan. So I think that's acceptable. But more than anything, like you said, somebody asked me about Kanako on a comment too, that once these fighters experiences some big show in America, if they have this philosophy and maybe pride that they don't want to go back to RIZIN kind of thing. They think RIZIN is more like entertainment instead of sports, which I don't really agree, but a lot of fighters has that kind of mentality,
Well, there's a couple different types of fighters. I mean, Kanako always seemed like the type of fighter that wants to fight the best competition.
Right, and she's pure athletes, being the wrestler from age 2 kind of stuff,
Exactly.
So yeah, so I mean, but I agree that not for girls, if you're out of UFC, it's not many places to go.
It's actually significantly worse than it was like 5 years ago.
Exactly.
It's all dried up.
If it's not Invicta, go to PFL, but PFL has only a couple of divisions, right? So you're forced to fight lower or heavier weight classes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not a flyweight, you're kind of screwed because
screwed. And again, so what? Then you're RIZIN, which is the division is not really active.
No, it's like 3 to 4 fights a year, and at the most those are championship bouts.
Right. So for fighters to make a living, or at least to get the career going, they got to fight at least twice a year, or maybe 3 or 4. Right. So in that sense,
I mean, if you're a young fighter, Oshima is like regularly fighting, I think 4 times a year.
Yes, because she's been always wanted to fight. So now I'm glad that she's getting the Invicta fights, and if the Invicta cannot make her active, she could always fight in Japan.
I know she's physically small, but I've always felt like Oshima has the right mindset for a fighter.
She does, and she has the right skill set too.
Exactly. She understands that like your prime window is so short, and you got to make hay while the sun shines, so to speak.
Right. Exactly.
She's fighting as much as possible.
Exactly. And finally, she got her wish to the fight in North America. And this, I have been talking to them for a long time about this deal, and we've been waiting because of the Invicta. Couldn't confirm this year's schedule, but now they have. So they have 5, 6 shows, whatever that is, on Friday nights. So hopefully this is going to revive women's MMA a little bit more.
Well, for years now, she's been talking about how she has like this secret goal.
Right, to fight in America.
This is clearly the goal. So glad that it finally came true for him.
So she got that at least, right? So that's good,
And hopefully her teammate Yukimoto win. What is the next road to UFC? They're doing it in Vegas. They have to get visas for all these Asian fighters now.
Right, I know, but they can make it. I think it should be fine,
So hopefully Mickey wins too, and the two of them can fight in the North America from now on.
It's the rematch of that,
Really good Chinese girl, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, I think, We'll see. Yeah.
You have a question about Naoki Inoue. Do you know any information on him?
Yeah, I do. His fights are confirmed, so that's all I can say. But it's not going to be in Super RIZIN. We wanted to get that done in end of July, but it's not. So it's probably more like September. And there's only few people left for him to fight, so he's going to get that wish.
That's cracking up. They have his face plastered all over Yokohama. He's like sponsored by the bank over there or something.
Right. That's good. Good for him, So anyway, so let's talk about this one. Sudario loses to Anpo in breaking down. I mean, I have a
lot to say about this, but this is just so embarrassing.
Used to have an extra round, right? For some reason, they decided extra round on that spot. So Sudario was forced to kind of say yes and go into the extra round and lost on decision.
Well, the way that this was explained to me was that Sudario was the one that was kind of like running his mouth. And then once the fight, Anpo was like, let's do it. Sudario kind of backed off and was like, "Oh, I'm a RIZIN contract fighter. I can't fight because I have like my obligation to RIZIN." Then Sakakibara was like, "Hey, I don't care if you fight for them. You ran your mouth. You should do the fight." Kind of threw him under the bus. And
Right.
then he lost to a guy that weighs 44 kilos less than him. Like this guy
Oh,
weighs like less
no,
than 100 pounds.
I know. But again, he did this kickboxing rules, right? Fight. I mean, you gotta understand. I mean, I kept saying this from like 30 years ago. I mean, even though it's a fight sport, if the rules are different, it's like a tennis and ping pong. You're not gonna go in there and beat somebody who's a seasoned athlete on that field. And especially Sudario is not known for footworks, like sharp punches, whatever that is. I mean, it's like how Akebono fought, right? The first time when he fought K1, it was just not possible,
Well, hopefully Sudario learned a valuable lesson about running his mouth then, because he kind of talked himself into an unwinnable fight. Because if he knocked out Anpo, people were like, yeah, of course he did. You outweighed him by 100 pounds. And now the worst result happened. He lost to Anpo.
Right. And
Anpo looked like he'd been through a war when they took him out. But still, I mean, his stock went really high. So.
right, and Sudario's stock's way down. But again, the way they did the extra round is really not supposed to be done that way. That's not a sport. You know what I mean?
No.
It's a pro wrestling thing almost.
I mean, do you think breaking down is a sport? Come on, I've got porn
Exactly.
stars throwing chairs at dudes in the tryouts.
But I guess it's the Generation Z Gen Z kind of thing. Like like you try to make a quick buck, became famous overnight kind of mentality, right?
Okay,
So
your 15
they
minutes of
have
fame.
wars if they have to,
Yeah.
But again, in sports, that doesn't work.
Oh, Ichi does bring up a good point that Anpo has been getting a lot of attention for sparring with Strickland too.
Oh, I know, I saw that. Right. I mean,
Yeah, Ampo's good at getting attention for himself.
What are you going to learn from Strickland, right? I mean, in a way, you could learn a lot, but he is one of the most unorthodox fighter, right? The way he fights. So, I mean, great if you can learn that, but that's.
No, I mean, I think it's just
different.
It's just, I think it's more of like a savvy move just to get his name out there.
Yeah, of course, right. And it's funny that Strickland is actually in Japan, but again, this tells you he's so much weaker. So to about people who thought that Tokyo is such an expensive city or whatever it is, you go to Tokyo, you can probably buy a beer and ramen for less than $10 now, right?
People have been taught. I mean, Japan is also like the tourism. What do they say? It's past the threshold. Like there are more tourists in Japan than Japan can handle.
Right, and
there's a lot of people taking advantage of the weekend.
Exactly, weekend, and I would be too because I live in New York, and compared to that, I mean, it looks so much cheaper. I mean, I'm almost tempted to buy something in Japan at this point, like a condo or some little house. You know what I mean? Like it's just so much cheaper. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, like for example, in New York, let's say if you want to rent an apartment, you have to prove at least you have a 40 times more as the 1 month worth of rent as an income. You know what I mean? So $2,000 apartment, you gotta have 80,000. But some places ask for 80 times more. So in that scale, Tokyo is so much cheaper, right? From everybody's point of view now.
Right.
Yeah. And go back to this Dario Anpo thing. So now Anpo's so popular, so more than anything, probably he's gonna get a fight in Super RIZIN, right? They're probably gonna add a couple more fights, I think, because this whole thing is a festival.
You think Sudario? I mean, Sudario also kind of got hurt by the Enson news because his name got dragged to that too. So I feel like he's having a rough couple months.
Right. Yeah, but again, it's like I don't know. See, like again, he mouth off, and I think some fighter are not using social media correctly. Right. I think that's what's happening, and a lot of people think fighting on X or cussing each other on Instagram is the way to promote, but it really isn't. It just only happens in a very short period of time, and most of the time, you end up, hurting your career doing some stupid fights like he did, right?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it before. I feel like on S, you just got to be like, you can't fabricate on SNS. You have social media. You have to just be who you are, because everyone will see through the bullshit if you try to pretend like you're Conor McGregor.
Exactly.
But there's so many. Without naming fighters, they just don't know how to use it. They think it's like a tool to ask for fights from the promotion, which I feel like most promotions would hate that, to be honest.
Exactly. That's why this is again the time a fighter should be looking at the guy like Taira. How often they do Instagram or X, whatever? Not barely, right? I mean, I don't think Kai does even YouTube anymore. Not much that often, you know.
No, he's focused on training.
Exactly. And even though one word like "I'm very happy, thank you," or "I want to fight," whatever that is, that's gonna get them much farther than fighting all these,
Yeah.
other fighters on X or Instagram. So I hope they realize that,
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
just look at fighters like Itsuki. We brought her up. She just posts like one picture every couple of days. That's all she needs to do.
right. Again, but she knows she's selling the sexy side too, right? And that's why probably 1/3 of her followers are from Asia. They're probably looking at her as like a sexy idol.
Yeah.
But that's one way to, really promote herself. So
It got her the Monster Energy sponsorship.
right. So at the end, let's talk about this Panchan poster incident. The last topic of the day. I mean, what happened there? There's an election for the governor.
I'm going to have to explain this for those not in Japan. So when you're in Japan and you're like walking around, you'll sometimes see these, like, the best way to describe it is like a billboard.
Yeah.
But it's like for people walking, and they'll be like in parks or by train stations.
Right.
And they have little squares on them that are probably the size of like a sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And politicians in elections will rent a space to put a poster on. And it generally has all of the candidates on there, so you can see who all's running for the upcoming election.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out there is like a loophole where you can put your face on a poster even if you're not the politician that's running.
Right.
But if you are like supporting a politician that's running.
Uh-huh.
And so what I read was that this weird party, the political party, this is like the Tokyo governor race. The party's entire stance is to like stop the NHK people from coming to your door to asking for money.
Right.
And Panchan Rina, this political party made it well known that if you give them money, they'll let you put your face on a poster and put it on this board. So Panchan Rina gave them money. And then I think she said in a video that she put like 5,000 to 6,000 posters of herself up all around Tokyo. And like this board, I mean, ideally each square is supposed to be a different politician.
Right, yeah.
And she is just like blocked out so much of each one of these boards.
And there's a QR code on this poster, right?
Right. And I think the politician who she's supporting, his name is in extremely tiny letters. Like you can almost illegible.
That's so funny.
And it's kind of funny because she's kind of she used to be very popular.
Right.
And while she's still well known because of her association with the Asakura brothers, ever since the kind of like fake autograph poster incident, she's been kind of getting a lot of negative attention with how she dealt with that.
Right.
And then this comes up, and it's giving people that already didn't like her just more reasons not to like her. And people like rolling their eyes. They're saying another poster incident with Panchan. And naturally, because she fights for Knockout. Knockout had like the most sketchy response. Like, well, she's a freelancer, so we can't tell her what to do.
Well,
and then
one thing about people like her, like I've seen so many athletes who just keep hanging out with the wrong crowd. Isn't that what's happening with her? I mean, like, somehow she's hanging out with the wrong crowd.
I'm not going to comment on this part, but I will say a major criticism of Panchan Rina is that she just seems to really want attention.
Yeah, I know. Any way she wants, almost.
She was like a failed actress, a failed model. Like she's just kind of like gone through the things of trying to become famous. And making posters like this is just feeding the people that have that idea of her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, helping build the image that she's just kind of this, all she cares about attention. And it's not looking good.
Again, that's not looking good, but she's making, in a way, a headline, national news, right?
Well, I mean, if you classic Kiss, I guess. No, all press is good press.
Yeah, that's so funny.
And she's always like, I mean, doesn't she's like training with Stamp over in Thailand now? Like they're posting social media pictures together. So I mean, I think
But again, if I were RIZIN, I would sign her. I would sign Itsuki, whatever that is. They can make this division very interesting.
well, that's my whole issue with Panchan is that Rising did have her and never brought her back,
I know.
which made me think, what happened? Why did they never bring her back? Was it because the fight was kind of boring, or was it because she was difficult to deal with?
Or the people around her are difficult to deal with. Who knows?
That's also very possible.
Yeah,
did she not sell enough tickets to make it worth it?
Right. So yeah, wish she, Anyway, so I guess all right. So this is it for today, and yeah, I'm gonna try to get back to more active with you. So yeah, let's try to do that more often.
Well, we got a bunch of events coming up, so we'll have some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we should definitely do this after the next Super Rising, because after that, by then we can talk about a lot of things, including maybe Naoki's next fight, and we'll know more about the Kai, Taira, all the other things, right? So
exactly.
All right, so I guess we'll see you again. Let's try to do this again in a couple of weeks. Which I said that all the time. I'm gonna try to do it. Okay, this time. All right, so we'll see you soon.
Yep.
All right. Bye.